Hey everyone, good afternoon. It's Charity. I am coming at you live from Fort Worth, Texas today. I'm here visiting my sister for the holidays and we'll be here for about another week. I'm actually outside right now because there is, in my sister's house, a sleeping toddler and I know better than to wake her up. I would get the wrath of my sister for sure. So I'm outside today. It's a beautiful day here in Fort Worth, Texas. And I just wanted to tackle a topic with you that is, just to be honest, is a little bit more geared toward the newbie recruiters, but you know, veteran recruiters, you could still benefit from this as well because we all have a tendency sometimes to fall into this trap. And that trap, my friends, is called low-hanging fruit. And if you don't know what that means, I'll elaborate that a little bit more and talk to you about how that's affecting your business. So, to define low-hanging fruit, basically what I mean by that is candidates who seem very easy to work with. It could be candidates that are in specialties, maybe like your LPNs or your CNAs or maybe psych nurses, people who seem very easy to place. And, you know, those candidates, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with working with those candidates, but sometimes we can get a lot of those candidates on our desks, or sometimes the candidates seem easy to work with at first, but then they start to become a little bit more challenging once you've started the paperwork process with them, or once they are working on assignment with you, and now you realize, okay, that was probably a little bit too easy. So these problems start to come to the surface after you've started working with them for a little while. So I'll share a personal example with you because, you know, I think it's important for us all to share our own stories when it comes to this stuff. So I'm not just telling you that, you know, this is how you should do something. I'm telling you a lot of this stuff because it's how I learned. And I think it's great to share a story of my own. So my very first placement ever as a recruiter was a psych nurse who was from North Carolina. And she seemed really great. We seemed to hit it off on the phone and everything was wonderful. And, you know, so I thought, oh gosh, this is awesome. This is going to be my first placement. I'm feeling really good about this. And, you know, we did have some challenges with getting paperwork in. I had to really sort of, harass her, for a lack of a better word, to get her documents into me, get her resume in, get, all the stuff that I needed to submit her to jobs. And then after that, it was like she was on my ass to get an interview. What's happening with this? Why haven't they called me yet? And all this other stuff. And so, you know, we were talking several times a day just because she needed an update on something. It just seemed like, you know, she was really desperate to get this job lined up and all this other stuff. So we did end up getting her placed, but she had a lot of stipulations. She needed time off. The housing that we set up for her wasn't good enough. She needed this and that and the other. So we had to go back and find her different housing and all this other stuff. And then like maybe 2 weeks later, she walks off the contract because something has happened to one of her relatives or whatever. You guys know the story, right? So that was my first foray, if you will, into the low-hanging fruit territory. And so obviously I had to learn some lessons from that, and that is, you know, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. So, you know, sometimes we have to make those mistakes. So basically, you know, we've defined the low-hanging fruit. Why do we as recruiters decide to work with the low-hanging fruit? And I think it's important to understand this because we have to be aware of this within ourselves so that we can understand what our motivations are, why we're making these mistakes, so that we can work to correct them, right? So one of the reasons why we work with low-hanging fruit is because we are living in a world of instant gratification where we want things to happen quickly for us. We want things to happen perfectly for us. And we want it now. We want it, you know, we have all these demands of ourselves and we want to be good at things right away. So sometimes we work with a low-hanging fruit because we have these ego-driven needs to be successful and to get that first placement under wraps. And sometimes we have pressure from outside sources as well. Maybe you've got a manager who's getting on your butt to get your first placement. Maybe you've got goals that are staring you in the face, or maybe you just want to get to a full desk as quickly as possible because you want to buy a new house, you want to get married, you want to start a family. Whatever that case is, you're adding more pressure on yourself to get those placements. And when you have that pressure on yourself, sometimes you cut corners and you make decisions and you do things that maybe you wouldn't do in a normal, rational, logical situation. I think we just get so excited about getting people on our desk and making things happen that we tend to make mistakes that maybe we wouldn't have made it if we were looking at things from a very subjective standpoint. We like to say operate from a position of abundance, right? So if we operate from a position of abundance, we're more selective. We tend to make better decisions. We tend to focus more on quality versus quantity, and that's where the magic tends to happen. The downside of that is that it can take more time. With travel nursing, you guys might have found, my veteran recruiters who might be listening, you may have found that it's taken you some time to get to a point where you feel like you've got a solid foundation built with good, high quality travelers. And I know that was the case for me. It took a while for me to feel like I really was starting to have a desk of reliable, high quality candidates. And that's the nature of this business. Sometimes you have to talk to candidates for a month, 2 months, 3 months, even a year. I had a fantastic cath lab nurse who worked with me for several contracts, and I talked to him for a year before he took his first contract with me. So these things do take time, and that just goes against our nature to make things happen right away. But we have to be very careful about that because the low-hanging fruit is going to shoot us in the foot if we're not careful. And there's also, to kind of go along with the idea of the high pressure and stuff like that. I think a lot of us have, especially salespeople, we just have this sort of innate desire to prove something to someone. And sometimes that someone is ourselves. We want to prove to ourselves that we know how to do this job, that we can do this job. And sometimes getting that first placement or getting those first few placements out of the way helps us to prove to ourselves that, yes, I can do this, and yes, I'm worthy of this job, and whatever the case might be for you. So those are all things I just want you to be aware of as you're choosing to work with people. Are you choosing to work with this person because they're the right person who will do a good job for you and help build the foundation that you have for your desk? Or are you just trying to get a placement out of it and trying to get somebody on a contract for the sake of getting a commission check or getting recognition or whatever the case might be? So don't be afraid to ask yourself those questions. So I kind of touched on a couple of reasons why we shouldn't work with a low-hanging fruit. One of the other things about working with candidates who may not be the best fit is that it doesn't just affect us. If I decide to work with somebody who I ignore their red flags and they go to a contract and they just completely screw up, or they end up backing out or walking off the contract, yes, that sucks for me, but guess what? It also sucks for my account manager who worked really hard to get the interview. It sucks for the hospital who now has another shortage in their staffing, and the hospital now thinks that my company made a big mistake and maybe they're going to be less likely to work with me or my agency because of this mistake. And I've also wasted the time of the candidate because I didn't do a good job of qualifying that person and making sure that they were a good fit to begin with. So it's not just about you. There are other people involved in your decisions and your choices. And when you choose to work with people, you have to keep those things in mind. And one other important person or people I neglected to mention is the patient, right? So obviously the purpose of us being in travel nursing is to fill positions so that patients will get the care that they need. I mean, we're literally affecting lives being saved here, so if you're working with these candidates who aren't maybe the best fit, and because we wanted to just throw somebody into a job for our own sake or for our own benefit, now we may be potentially risking the health and safety of a patient. And I mean, to me, that's unacceptable, right? So, So we just have to, again, just be considerate of who is all involved in our decisions here. It's not just about me trying to get a full desk. It's about patients getting the care that they need. It's about my company having a good reputation within the industry and within these hospitals. There's a lot of factors that we have to consider here. The other great thing about working with candidates who are higher quality is that when you've got your foundation built with candidates who do a great job and you've qualified them and you know they're a good fit and they go to the hospital, they make a great impression. So these are your type A awesome candidates, the ones that you want to take more time to qualify and to recruit for your desk. The more of those candidates that you have on your desk, the more likely you're going to get referrals from those candidates. So the great candidates that you work with are going to refer great people to you. The low-hanging fruit candidates that you work with, guess who they're going to refer to you? More low-hanging fruit, right? The candidates that, these people go and tell all of their friends, like, hey, Joe Schmo went and got me a job, even though I demanded this and that and the other, and he went through and got all this stuff for me, so you should go work with him because he'll do everything you ask him to do. It's happened. It's happened to me. I know it happened. So it's just something to keep in mind. Who do you want to build your desk? Who do you want in these hospitals taking care of patients? That's what you need to be aware of as you're qualifying these candidates and asking them questions and everything. So bottom line is that low-hanging fruit may seem like a good idea at first, but believe me, it's not a good idea. Make sure that you take the time to qualify your candidates. Operate from a position of abundance. Pretend like you're already running 20 to 30 to 50 travelers, and then you'll understand that you don't have to work with every single person who sends you a resume or answers your voicemail or whatever. Okay? It's not just about you. There's a lot of other people involved in this. So I hope this helps. I hope I didn't ramble too much. It's obviously a topic I'm very passionate about, and I will look forward to chatting with you guys. We'll be back next week for Facebook Live. If you have any comments or feedback, we'd love to hear from you, especially the veteran recruiters who have had their own experiences working with the low-hanging fruit. What advice do you have for newbie recruiters? We'd love to hear that. Let's help each other out. All right, make it a great day. Bye-bye.